Spider-Man Brand New Day is the fourth film in the Tom Holland-led Spider-Man film series. It's directed by Destin Daniel Cretton and written by Chris McKenna and Eric Sommers. The film follows Peter Parker, who anonymously protects New York City as the hero Spider-Man, and investigates a powerful new threat while his superpowers undergo a surprising and potentially dangerous evolution. This will be a spoiler-free review, but before we get into it, have you seen Brand New Day? If you have, what'd you think of it? And if you haven't, are you planning on seeing it, or are you waiting for it to release later on down the line? Let me know down in the comments below, and without wasting any more time, let's just jump straight into it. Starting off with the good, I think this is easily the best acted film overall for any of the Tom Holland-led Spider-Man films. Across the board, everyone is doing a really good job, and nobody feels like they're phoning it in. Especially the extra actors, they do so well here that it was very surprising to me. Sometimes they steal the scenes. I'd say there are three standouts in the acting department though, and those three being Tom Holland, Jon Bernthal, and Sadie Sink. This is the best Tom has been as Spider-Man. His last three films, he felt almost like Spider-Man Jr., never truly living up to the high expectations from the other two Spider-Men. But here it feels like he's finally Spider-Man. While I think he's a bit too trusting for his own good, seeing what's happened in the last two times, was way too trusting too quickly. You think he'd learn to be a little bit more cautious, but that's really my only small gripe with this version of Spider-Man. Jon Bernthal as the Punisher is easily the second best character in this movie to me. I wasn't completely on board with the Punisher being in the movie just because I want Spider-Man films to focus mainly on Spider-Man characters and villains. But Jon is excellent, and the duo of the Punisher and Spider-Man is one that I really want to see more in other films. Maybe make a duo film, honestly, not just a Spider-Man movie, something along those lines. But if you're going to have Jon be in other Spider-Man films and not be a duo film between the Punisher, let him have more screen time, and then we're all set on that department. And then we have Sadie Sink as Jean Grey. Spoilers, I guess, since they never say that in the trailers. For the first two acts, she's kind of just in the shadows, kind of running the show, which was alright. But then the third act happens, and that's where she really starts to shine and kind of takes over the whole film. She is easily the most emotionally driven performance of the film, and I can't wait to see what they do next with this version of Jean Grey. This is easily the best looking live action Spider-Man film since The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Destin Daniel Cretton and cinematographer Brett Pollack has finally made New York feel, look, and breathe like New York City again. Such a small thing like this can change so much about a movie, and I'm hoping that they bring Brett back for the next film, whenever that is. This should just be how Spidey and New York City look from here on out in the MCU. Along with the new look, this is the most electric web swinging has been since The Amazing Spider-Man 2. A lot of the issues with Tom's first three films are they just have way too much CGI in them, that it becomes a bit too distracting. That's not really an issue here because they did so much web swinging and stunts practically while still enhancing them with CGI here and there, but that's what it's for, to enhance these practical effects, not to fully recreate these scenes, just not even really shooting anything. Going off the practical web swinging and stunts, this is the best Spider-Man suit in any of Tom's movies. And that goes down to them letting the suit remain practical and only enhancing it if they needed to in post. Not the other way around, which has been fully CGI for the vast majority of the time in Tom Holland's movies. You can really tell the practical suit, and they butchered it to death in post for his earlier three films, but we do not get that here. We need more practical suits in these superhero movies. They just look so much better, and you can just tell so much love and care was put into this Spider-Man suit specifically. And this is easily the most fun and entertaining film action-wise for any of Tom's Spider-Man films as well. Everything just feels more impactful because doing these scenes as practical as you can goes such a long way. You can do a great action sequence and web swinging with CGI, but you have to let them have the time to make them look the best that they can in post-production. Marvel nowadays doesn't do that, unfortunately, but thankfully any effects made in post in this movie are made easier because of the choice to do everything as practically as they can. The third act has this one really well put together action sequence that really sticks out to me. The rest of the movie does have good action scenes, but the final battle was on another level compared to everything else in the movie. Easily the best action sequence in any of the Tom Holland Spider-Man films. And then the cherry on top is how they decide to end the film right after. such a great balance between action, spectacle, and the human condition that has been at the core of this movie. As not as much as I would hope for, but I'll get back into that later. The film's score is probably one of the more weaker aspects of the film. While I still think it's probably the best that any of the MCU Spider-Man films has had, it just isn't that memorable. It's not bad by any means, but Spider-Man's scores should make me feel like it's elevating him entirely. Make me feel like I'm Spider-Man when I leave the theater humming that score. It's still very solid, but I just wish it was a bit better. And the last good thing I'll say is I think this is the best that both Ned and MJ are in any of the Spider-Man films. This is also the one where they're in the least prevalent, but the time they are given is definitely well used. It makes Peter feel all the emotions that he should be feeling. I do wish they were in the movie more though and play into a part of the film I think what that was lacking, but I'll get into that later on in my review. Moving on to the mixed, I think the addition of Jean Grey and Bruce Banner / the Hulk are not needed in the story. I don't think they are done poorly in this film at all. Hell, I think they're pretty good to solid to great even for Jean Grey. But when I go to a Spider-Man film, I kind of want it to feature more Spider-Man characters and Spider-Man villains more than other Marvel films. Yes, I said I enjoyed The Punisher a lot, but it doesn't feel like he's impeding on other Spider-Man characters who could have taken his place. Jean Grey as the antagonist is very solid, but I think seeing Mr. Negative in live action would have been a lot more fitting, especially with the plot point of Peter's Spider-Man DNA evolving because of his unchecked trauma and all the hurt that he's had pent up. Mr. Negative is perfect for that, having him amplify Peter's hurt and trauma that is acting up again because of MJ and Ned being back in New York, and that his DNA accelerating would have been so much more interesting than what they decide to do with it. I can see why they didn't, because maybe they didn't want to be compared to the Spider-Man PS4 game, but because of that, it's just a plot point that isn't fully fleshed out in my opinion, and it's just there to make Peter artificially stronger by the end of the movie, which is kind of a shame. And then for the Hulk, this is probably the best we've seen Bruce Banner / the Hulk in almost a decade, but that's not really saying much since he's been a shell of his former self for the most part. But I think he could easily have been replaced with Dr. Connors, aka the Lizard. Have him be the person to help Peter make the inhibitor chip to stop the DNA mutation or nullify it a bit. Then you're able to set him up to experiment with DNA slicing himself to get his arm back, which then goes sideways in a future film and he becomes the Lizard. This also makes Peter responsible to an extent for this villain, which I think is something that these films are missing more of. Some kind of real connection to Peter Parker / Spider-Man. Not everyone needs that, but some characters definitely should. I want my Spider-Man media to mainly focus on Spider-Man and his cast of characters. You can get rid of the Hulk from this movie entirely and let Tombstone be the muscle for the scene that the Hulk was in. Tombstone was even shown in the movie's opening. Why not use that callback to the opening and use the Spider-Man characters more that you have in this film? But I'll talk about Tombstone more in a bit. At the end of the day, it's not that big of a deal. That's why these two characters are in the mixed and not the bad. Because they're not bad, they're done really well. But for me, I just want more Spider-Man villains and characters to be the main priority of my Spider-Man media. I hope in the sequel we get just that. Leave the MCU expanding to other films. And the final thing that I'll say that's mixed is the messaging of the film. While the film's messaging is there, I just wish they did more with it. Having such a universal thing that everyone experiences, and in your movie, you really only having Peter deal with this, the struggle of dealing with trauma and not having anyone to reach out to for help. You don't need everyone to be dealing with struggles, but I do think you should have shown off what a healthy support system and having people around you to help you deal with these kinds of issues looks like. Something small like that goes a long way, especially for people who have a hard time reaching out or are looking for the courage to reach out for help. I don't think they did a bad job with this movie's messaging. I just wish they did more with it. Have it also play a bigger role throughout the film and not just randomly jump back to it whenever it feels convenient for it. Not poorly done at all, just not enough done with it for my liking. Moving on to the bad, I wish they leaned more into the actual mutating DNA part of the story. They made such a big deal about it in the trailers, and it felt like this was the main thing that they were going to focus on throughout this movie. And while it technically is, it doesn't really affect Peter at all for the vast majority of this film. And I think the best way to change that is to have Ned and MJ be more involved with the story, have them be the main reason the DNA mutation is starting to really pick up the pace now that they've come back to New York City. That trauma and hurt is coming back in full force. While he's happy they're back, make them the reason it's progressing at a faster rate. Then you should make them a part of the solution as well. While you don't need to tell them everything, you can have Spider-Man in a desperation come clean to both of them on everything. They wouldn't need to know who Peter Parker is to listen to Spider-Man have these struggles that everyone does. To them, it strips away the superhero and lets them see him as a guy with problems just like everyone else. If you're going to bring Ned and MJ back, you have to make them more integral to the story overall. And for me, at least, they didn't do enough to make their inclusion feel needed. Especially with how the movie seems to end, it just feels like another way this Peter Parker doesn't have to live with the consequences of his actions like other iterations of Spider-Man do. What I do think this movie does worse than anything is the usage of Scorpion. He is one of your only Spider-Man villains who has an actual gripe against the webhead. Him being the reason he was arrested in Homecoming, and you didn't use him in Far From Home or No Way Home, and that's okay, but he should have either been the main villain or had a way more prominent role in this film. But when he is in the movie, he's used solely as muscle for Jean Grey to help her get what she wants, and that's it. And it's not even out of his own free will. She's just controlling him, which I get, but I guarantee that Scorpion would have helped you since you broke him out of jail and he has a vendetta against the city of New York. Let him have agency of his own and not just be a mind-controlled dummy that Jean Grey is using as a means to an end that she does with everyone else, because he's just thrown away right after this, pretty much. We unfortunately don't get an agency-filled Scorpion. We get him in a quick montage at the beginning, then see him being broken out, then him being controlled and easily taken out, and he's never seen again in the film. It's a waste of his character, and the wait to see him back on the big screen was not worth the wait, which is a shame because we haven't gotten Scorpion in live action before, and this is unfortunately what you give us. I think it's embarrassing and a shame that they even use Scorpion in any capacity if this is what you're going to do with him. And that goes back to the same with Tombstone that I talked about in the mixed area. Why even have Tombstone in that montage at the beginning of the film if he's not going to have some kind of purpose in the story at large? Both Scorpion and the Hand do have some purpose in the story at large, so why not Tombstone? I think they just wanted to add another smaller villain for the montage and didn't actually want him in the movie, which is a shame, because that's another Spider-Man character that we haven't gotten in live action before. And it just feels like a missed opportunity to use the characters you have used in the montage to play a bigger role throughout the movie's story that you're going for. It's just a shame. I wish it was a bit different, but what can you do? Spider-Man Brand New Day is a great next chapter to start the MCU Spider-Man on, bringing it back to street level and having it more emotional than any of the other MCU Spider-Man films. While I think we need less of the MCU in Spider-Man films and focus on the messaging can be better, this is easily the best Spider-Man has been on the big screen in over a decade. Spider-Man Brand New Day gets a 9 out of 10 from me. I think there is a bit to improve on, and I think if they keep the creative team together and focus more on Spider-Man characters and villains, I think we can finally get something to rival the best of the Spider-Man in films to date. Thank you all for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe to keep up to date with my next review, and until next time, have a great rest of your day.